today we're going to be pulling off some of these timbers.
The formwork for a wall like this needs to be really strong. I'm double checking that the concrete hadn't spilled through the gravel that we put in between the cracks of the stones. I'm marking the timber up with a pencil using my level to keep a straight edge. Appropriate stone to fill this gap.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
Yesterday we got rained off right when we were trying to finish this wall off. We also ran out of a little bit of stone, so we'll have to patch that stone together later in the week. But the principal part of our wall got poured. So today we're going to be pulling off some of these timbers because I'm using these timbers as our garden edging on this upper level up here. So we're going to be replacing the temporary timbers we have along this garden path edge right here with the form timbers we use for this wall. I've got to rip them down, rip them in half and cut them to size. When we built this stone wall, I built a form here in preparation for our treated pine timbers to go through here. I already measured and calculated it, so the new piece of timber is going to come in here, run across the front of these bricks, cut back into this area to create the edge of our pathway. So today we're going to pull these off, which gives us the chance to take a look at our stone.
The formwork for a wall like this needs to be really strong. So in this case, I was able to use 75mm thick sleepers as the main part of the form. Because I knew I needed garden edging for the later part of the project, I was able to get two purposes out of the one piece of material. The rest of the formwork for this wall is made out of a combination of purpose-built panels for form building and scrap timber material from leftover projects. I constantly recycle and reuse these scrap timbers for my formworks. It's a lot of fun when you pull the formwork off a wall and reveal it for the first time and get to see how it turned out. We've put a lot of work in creating this wall with the excavation, the foundations, all the levels we had to build it up. And now we get to take a look at the final result.
Daydreamer, kitten and maid, take me back, all the way back to them days, running around in a gown and a crown.
I'm double checking that the concrete hadn't spilled through the gravel that we put in between the cracks of the stones. You can see here how all the gravel's being washed out between these stones. This is what's going to give us our Drystone wall look in the finished product. As I'm washing the wall clean, I can see how our process has come out really effectively. All the stones are sitting really flat in a nice plane, and we've come up with some really good random patterns of large and small stones. I like to take my time with this process and enjoy looking at the wall we've created. I can even recognize some of the stones I selected at the quarry. After blasting out all the loose gravel with our hose, we can see any spill-throughs that happened with the concrete. I fixed this using my small mattock by chipping away at the concrete that spilled through between the cracks in the stones. I take my time with this process as I don't want to scratch the stone as I'm removing the concrete. This was the reason we added pigment into the concrete that we pushed into the cracks of the stone when we were doing the backfilling process. So if any of that concrete spilled through between the cracks, after we've chipped it away, it'll naturally blend into the wall. I'm cleaning up the edge of this Chinese roof tile we put in the wall. This was an artifact brought back from China by a family member, and the client wanted me to include it in the wall if possible. So here I've put it in the center of this wall, which gives it a really unique look.
Daydreamer, kidnap me. Take me back, all the way back to them days.
I've removed the temporary timber we were using for our garden edge and are preparing to rip down one of the sleepers to replace it with the permanent garden edge we'll be installing. I'm marking the timber up with a pencil using my level to keep a straight edge. I then rip it in half with my saw. You always want to keep a good center of gravity above your saw when you're operating it. This will help you keep control, help you achieve a safe cut. I'm placing one of our treated timbers in the angle it's going to end up in. This is to help calculate how we're going to cut it to get a nice custom fit. By lining up my set square with our staircase and marking it with my pencil, I should be able to get an accurate cut for this angle. Once my timber's marked up, I return it to my workspace I've set myself up with. I'm using a combination of my power saw and a hand saw to make this cut. Due to the angle of the cut, it's too deep to be able to complete with the power saw, so I finish it off with my hand saw. After completing the angled cuts on both ends of this timber, I return it to its position so we can fix it off with heavy timber screws. As always, I'm drilling a pilot hole to stop the timber from splitting when we put the screw in. With one end of the garden edge secure, I make a few slight adjustments with the level on the other side with some packers before I lock it into the other timber. I'm double checking the height of this timber with my level before we move on to adding the next piece in this system. When I'm building timber pathway edging, I always measure and cut and install each piece one at a time. Things can move around easily, and if you try and pre-cut everything, you'll end up with ugly gaps in the joinery. For the next piece of edging, I'm using the full thickness of the sleeper material because the pathway slowly graduates downhill and we need coverage of the full 200mm. After trimming it to the right length, I have to adjust it so it can sit plumb inside the trench we've prepared. I'm using my mattock to clean out a little more dirt to make room for this timber. I double check it with my level to make sure it's going to be nice and flat. After getting it to the right height in our trench, I do one final check with my level to make sure it's plumb. I lock this into place with another heavy timber screw. Part of finishing off this garden bed is to remove the formwork from the inside of our wall. Often the inside formwork is a little tighter in the concrete, so I have to use a crowbar and a hammer to ease it out gently. Once it's removed, we can see the nice finish on our concrete pour. Looks like it's come out really solid. I need to add a little more golden path gravel around the edges where we've added this garden edging. Most of the golden path gravel was added earlier in the project. We just need to do a bit of a tidy up around the edges where we've done some excavation to add this edging. I'm starting out by adding some base gravel that'll be underneath the decorative gravel. I raked back some of the golden path gravel I'd pushed out of the way whilst we did our excavations. I'm also having to add some new golden path gravel. Because this is a blend of two different ingredients, I'm bringing in some bags of our packing sand and the golden path gravel mix. I'll mix these together right on the pathway. I use my shovel and rake to spread these out up to the edge of the new timbers we've added, and that'll complete our pathway for the moment.
No mistake ever kept me late. We spent summers catching fireflies and winters on our skates. One big smile across my face. We used to dance our way to church on Sundays. Mama set the pace. Daydreamer, kidnap me.
The resident chickens love to come and visit whenever I've disturbed the soil. They also remind me to take a break, slow down and enjoy my process. Whenever the chickens show up, they have a way of snapping me out of my mind fog. It's easy to get carried away with busy thoughts when you're doing construction. I find it really effective to take a pause every now and again, get present, and then continue the task. It can end up being a lot more enjoyable and you actually make less mistakes. I mentioned earlier how we ran out of stone when we were finishing off the final part of the wall in the last episode. We don't have many rocks to stick onto the top of the wall, so I'm mixing up a small batch of our mortar mix with pigment and bondcrete to help it stick to the stone. I mix up all these ingredients in one of our small tubs. The key here is to get a nice firm but sticky mixture so the stones will stick really well to the existing wall. When I was finishing off the wall the other day and I knew I wouldn't have enough stone, I left voids for places to add stones later. I'm dry fitting some of these stones into the voids to make sure they fit before we start adding our cement. Once I'm satisfied the stones are going to fit snugly, I start adding my pigmented mortar onto the wall where I left the void for the stone to go. We want to make sure we get a nice sticky bed here. When there's enough cement on the wall, we butter the back of the stone so we get a really good adhesion between the two. I then seat it and push it in firmly. I scrape in a bit of extra mortar around the sides to make sure we've got a really solid contact. Then we add some of our gravel chips, which will help it blend into the other stones in the wall. I lightly rinse and wash the whole stone down to get rid of any mortar that's in any unwanted places. We've got to be careful not to add too much water in this process. When I'm satisfied with this stone being placed, I move on to the next one and repeat the process.
As a young girl, the fields were mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines. So offshore, playful and free, without a care in the world. I was one rich little girl, daydreamer, kidnapped me.
I continued to patch the rest of the holes in our wall. I gave it one final inspection to make sure there weren't any gaps I needed to fill before we moved on to our curved wall. The gap here was created because we had a piece of timber structure holding our retaining wall together. So I'd built the wall around this piece of timber, and once removed we had a void left here. So by selecting an appropriate stone to fill this gap, we're just going to cement it in the same way we did the other stones. Making sure we get a really nice bed of mortar. Tidy it up a little bit around the edges. Rinse it off. Add our gravel, which is going to help it blend in with the wall. And give it one final rinse. This completes all the patching of our stone wall. Join me on the next and final episode of this series as we cap the split face hollow block wall with our yellow bricks.
Daydreamer, kidnap me, take me back, all the way back to them days. Daydreamer, kidnap me, have me running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot. Have me running around, dressed in a gown, barefoot.
Thanks for joining me this week on my YouTube channel. Check the link below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or make a comment so I can help you with your future construction solutions. And don't forget to follow our channel for more ideas and how-to tips for home and garden projects.